What's up guys, it is the end of 2025. A lot of good and bad IEMs came out this year, and today we're going to be ranking them and awarding the best IEMs of 2025 that I have heard. Starting at under $25, we have the Tangzu 1R2 and the Tangent Bunny / the Zero Ultima DSP 3.5 version. Both of these offer very good value to performance. The 1R2 has very good accessories with the cable and then the Senkai tips, which itself are half the price of the IEM. So if you want the best unboxing, the best accessories, under 25, that would be the 1R2, and if you want something that is smoother and more refined, that would be the Bunny and the Zero Ultimas. For some honorable mentions, number 1, if you want something that is smoother, bassier, warmer, not as technical as the Warner and the Bunnies, but overall I guess you can say more musical, then you can find the Kiwi's Ballet for around $25. These are also very good for EQ because they are very smooth in the treble, and overall it's just a very relaxing and warm set. Another option here, if you want something that is sub-bass focused, something that is still bassy but better balanced, more extended in the vocals but still smooth enough, these would be the KZ Duonics. These remind me of the CCA Trios. Very good value for the performance and the sound that you get. They are under like 20 bucks on sale. The only main drawback is that with the tuning switches, sometimes there could be a little bit channel imbalance, and you know, it's KZ, might have some QC issues there, so hence why the honorable mention. We also have the GK content, which is basically a mini EW300. It's a little bit less detailed in the treble, less extended overall, not as quite resolving in the overall treble playback, but for the price that you can get, which is usually under $20, these are a pretty solid pick. Moving on, under $55, for our all-rounder set, we have the 7Hz Allua Ultras. These are a slight V-shaped sound. They're dynamic, they're energetic, but still well balanced, you know, pretty smooth in the treble, detailed enough, and basically these are a mini Defiant for like quarter of the price, and you can get these for around $25 on sale, which makes it a very good deal for a very fun and engaging sound. Moving on, if you want something more balanced, something more vocal and mid-range centric, we have the KZ Zenith. Very good layering, good soundstage, good vocal performer, very balanced, very clean, but you also get the options with the bass boost with these switches. Then lastly, for an honorable mention, we have the Crinier 02 Blues with the 10 ohm adapters. Now stock wise, the Bluetooth can be a little bit sharp, you know, a little bit bright, but with the 10 ohm adapter it kind of balances things out. You get a lot of sub bass impact, the slam. It basically turns into a mini HB punch, a very good bass head IEM. Moving on, under $125, we have the SimGod EG280s for our all-rounder set. These are slightly bright leaning. You get the sparkle, the pop in the female vocals, but it has enough fullness, enough low-end texture to make it balance out. It is slightly upper mids leaning, but overall for the price, the imaging, the performance is very solid. Another option here would be the Confined Quatillos. These are probably the most flexible set at this price range, mainly because of the nozzles. I personally like them the best with the black nozzles because they have a more bassy dynamic sound. Feel free to play around with them. They are a pretty good deal considering that you get a lot of variety with the nozzles. On the other hand, if you want something that is warmer but still well balanced, you get enough extension and air in the treble, the vocals pop out enough, it's well balanced, but you get a warm hug feeling to the sound. These would be the Kiwi's Aroso, a very solid set for something that is more relaxing and smooth. Then lastly, if you want something that is cleaner, more neutral, more balanced, you know, very vanilla, you can say, we have the Tangent Fission. These are a very good deal considering that they are using the same driver as the Origin and the Fullas, but it is just a lot cheaper, not as fancy in the accessories, but sound wise, tuning wise, they are basically the same and they use the same drivers. Now as for some honorable mentions, we have the Juicier Defiant first. These are a slight V-shaped sound, they're fun, they're dynamic, they're good all-rounder. The main, I guess, issue is that they have some QC issues. The first unit that I got had a pretty bad channel imbalance, and then my case zipper broke within like a few weeks. And second, because the Allua Ultras exist for a third of the price and they sound very, very similar, it makes the Defiant kind of harder to justify. Value-wise, I would personally go with the Allua Ultras because they sound very similar. Another honorable mention would be the Kiwi's Etude if you want to try the bone conduction timbre. It is more bouncy, reverby, echoey in the sub bass, and the etude is pretty prominent. It's not like super subtle like some of the other bone conduction driver stuff. So it's a good starting point if you do want to try and BCD drivers, and they are pretty cheap as well. They go under $100, so it's not gonna break your bank. Then finally we have the 7Hz Diablo and the Divine. These are a little bit pricey. I would say wait for them to go on sale for around like $100. Divine is very clean, balanced, vocal centric set. Diablo, bassy, bass head if you scale it up enough. So these two are a good fun option, but it's just a little bit pricey stock. Otherwise, I would recommend them. Next, under $200, starting with the all-rounders. If you want a smooth, balanced, clean, more quote-unquote vanilla inoffensive sound, we have the Cranier Daybreaks and the EPZ P50s. Get these for around like $150 on sale. They sound very close. The P50s maybe slightly more vocal centric, but either way, these two are a good starting point if you want a clean vanilla sound. Another option here if you want a clean and balanced sound but a little bit more dynamic and contrasty in the treble would be the QER's Aether. These, in my opinion, sound a little bit more engaging than the Daybreaks and the P50s at the cost of being less smooth. And speaking of being dynamic and engaging, we have the Lecture S12 Ultra if you want a slight V-shaped all-rounder sound, very engaging, more musical, more dynamic and contrasty than the Aether, the Daybreaks, and the P50s, but still not completely, sharp, and still smooth enough, but not completely vanilla sounding. Then if you want something that is bright leaning, something more treble focused, sparkly, airier, more detailed in the higher frequencies, these would be the Meyer CK2Vs. They are basically a better tuned version of the Dunu Brain Damage, less upper mid tilted, less thin, less artificial, better balance, but you still get the treble focused sound. And lastly, scaling wise, if you want a set that is clean, balanced, smooth, natural in the timbre, but just scales better than the Daybreaks, the P50s, the Aether, you got the Zigat Lush. These are basically a cleaner version of the Full Explorer, a more mid-range and technical, better separated and layered version. So if you like the immersion on the Explorer but you want a cleaner version of it, then that would be the Lush. Now for the honorable mention, we have the Punch Audio Protazos, whatever you want to call them. These are a bass head set, very low and focused. They remind me of a mini HBB Punch, mini Punch Audio Martellos, and they are a very fun, very engaging, dynamic kind of sound, but the main issue is that they sound very similar to the Legatos, and the Legatos are around like $100, under $100 on sale. So I would say wait for these to go on sale. Otherwise, a pretty fun bass head sound. Moving on, under $300 for our all-rounder set, we have the QER's Astrals. These are a slight V-shaped, dynamic, meta bass boosted kind of sound. They are fun, they're engaging. Technically, they are also very good for the price. And overall, if you're looking for more excitement in the sound over the Daybreaks, these would be a good upgrade to those. Another all-rounder would be the EPZ K9s. These are a warmer and smoother, more musical version of Harman 2019 and more musical version of the SimGot EM10s. They are less technical than the EM10s, but overall, tonality wise, I think most people will enjoy these a little bit more because they're just less shouty and more full in the sound. And if you want something that is similar to the Astrals but just warmer but still dynamic, still follows that meta, bass boosted kind of sound, these would be the Zigat Crescent. They're just a little bit warmer now and has a little bit more sparkliness in the treble. But speaking of a sparklier sound, we have the Zigat Horizons if you want a more brighter leaning playback, something that is airier, sparklier, better extended, more OCD like in the imaging. Basically, they are a brighter version of the Astrals and the Crescent with less bass, very technical for the price, very good value you could say. On the other hand, if you want something that is smoother, better balance, warmer in the sound, more mid-range focus, has better male vocals overall, these would be the Soft Ears Volume S in the bass boosted configuration. You also have the impedance switch if you want something that is cleaner and more technical as well. But speaking of a more balanced sound, we have the QER's Orchestra 2s. These are more neutral, more clean, I guess like vanilla plus, because they are slightly dynamic in the vocals. The vocals do have a slight pop to them, so they're not completely, water and vanilla. And you can get these for around $300 on sale if you want something that is more neutral and vocal focused. Some other options here would be the Yang Canon Pros and the U9 Trip, but these are more expensive, closer to $400, $350 on sale. Then lastly, for my bass sets out there, we have the Punch Audio Martellos. These are basically a better version of the Protazos. They are slight V-shaped, they're very dynamic, very contrasty. You get a lot of impact, prominence, a lot of quantity in general in the low end, but it's still well balanced in the vocals. The extension in the treble is still there, and detail wise it's still pretty solid for a bass headset. Now for the first honorable mention, we have the Dunu 142s. These are very similar to the Astros. The main difference is that the low end is less full, the vocals are also more forward, and the overall sound comes off as a little bit sharper and not as well balanced as the Astros, not as quote unquote musical as the Astros. Now they are $50 cheaper, so overall value is still pretty good because technicalities are around the same as the Astros. But if I were to pick, I would take the Astros because of just the tonality and the balance. It's going to be a little bit better. Another treble leaning set would be the Kibuyer Septet. These are also bright leaning. They're a little bit fuller, a little bit warmer in the sound, but you still get the brightness, the airiness in the overall playback. And lastly, if you're looking for a sweet, clean, smooth female vocal centric sound, these are the Tantrum Force. They're not very good as an all-rounder because they can lack a little bit detail, excitement, dynamics in the treble and the bass. The sub bass just doesn't exist. But if you're looking for something that is sweet, clean, good for vocals, give these a shot. Moving on, under $500, we got a lot of bangers here, and starting off with the Top Pros. If you want something that is an all-rounder, clean kind of sound that is well balanced, slight pop in the vocals, some sparkliness in the transients, a good treble extension, and very good detail, very good value for the price that you're getting, give the Top Pros a shot. And similarly, if you want something that is still well balanced but less vocal centric, more balanced, fuller in the mid bass, slightly smoother in the treble extension, these would be the T Pro SCs. Also very good for the price, $50 less than the Top Pros, around the same technical performance, but just not as vocal centric. Then after those, if you want the best bang for your buck, the most technical IEM for the money that you can buy, these would be the The-Audio Hype 4 Mark IIs. Very good value for the price. Main, I guess, drawback is that the treble can be a little bit much to some people. To me, they are riding the edge of being too energetic. They're just balanced enough. They're basically a better version of the Dunu Brain Damage. The audio is basically limit testing with the treble. Very OCD-like, sparkly, airy, detailed in the treble presentation. But they can be a little bit bright depending on your ears. On the other hand, if you want something that is airier, smoother, it's got the misty EST playback, give the Nice Hack Rockies a try. These are around $500. Very good value considering that you're getting ESTs, and the technical performance is also pretty good, around the same as the Top Pros. They're still well balanced and lean slightly on the brighter side of things, just not as sparkly and vocal centric as the Top Pros, not as detailed as the Hype 4s, but overall smooth, misty, and you get ESTs. However, you want something that is warmer but still has the airiness in the extension, so you get like a nostalgic, airy but still warm, dreamy like kind of sound. You have the Ziga Lunas. These are very quote-unquote musical and very good for rock, hip-hop, things that need a good amount of mid-bass but still the airiness in the cymbals. Then lastly, we got the Zigat Arcanus, my personal favorite vocal set, under $500. These are clean, well extended, they scale great for slower vocal centric sound, which is what I recommend. But most importantly, it's got that special sauce in the treble with a slight bite and sizzle, slight dynamic and transience and sharpness to the end notes, to the consonants, which gives off that goosebump feeling to the artist. Now, as for some honorable mentions, we have the High Sierra Omega 7 first. These have a very smooth, clean, well balanced, inoffensive, safe, I guess you can say monitor-like kind of sound. They're very good if you want something just like relaxing and smooth, but I find them to be a little bit boring, vanilla, basically water. I mean, not as water as the Dunu 242s, which didn't make the list because it's just too water. But if you do want something that is smooth, give these a shot. Then finally, for our endgame IEM, starting off with the all-rounders, we have the Monarch Mark IVs. These are well balanced, they're smooth, you get the ESTs, you get the layering, you get the performance, but you also get the tuning switch, which turns it into a warmer and bassier kind of sound. So both in terms of refinement, variety, and just value, these are pretty solid. Then stepping up from the Monarchs, we have the The-Audio Valhallas. These are basically a slightly detailed, more dynamic, and better bass texture version of the Monarch Mark IVs. They also cost $1,000 more, right? So in terms of, diminishing returns, the Mark IVs are the better value, but in terms of overall musicality, detail, overall, and high-end performance, the Valhallas are a slight step up. Next, for a neutral endgame IEM, we have the Lecture Mystic 8. These are well balanced, they're clear, but you also have a slight dynamic and contrast in the treble. You get the sparkliness, you get a slight, airiness to the sound. Very good for female artists, very good when it comes to vocals, and I would definitely give these a shot if you're looking for something that is more balanced. On the other hand, if you want something that is more bassy, dynamic, engaging, aggressive in the overall sound, you have the RS5 Mark IIs. These are a slight V-shaped sound, but still pretty, extended, well balanced in the upper mids, the treble, but you get the impact, the slam, the fullness, the meatiness, and just the texture, the rawness in the low end with the sub bass. Now, as for some honorable mentions, we have the Full Down X if you want a sub bass focused sound that is smooth, scales good, has a wide staging. The main, nitpick I have is that the detail could be a little bit better, and the overall sound is not as dynamic as I would like them to be. And speaking of low end, if you want a warmer sound, give the Fio FX17 a shot. These are a warmer all-rounder, very nicely extended in the treble. You get a good sense of space, but you also get that warmness and the texture in the mid bass. Basically a slightly better version of the Sophier's Twilight. And lastly, if you want a brighter leaning sound, something that is slightly V-shaped, you get the sparkliness, you get the extension, the air, and the treble. It focuses more on the higher frequencies. Give the BGVP Solomon a shot. I think these are pretty unique, and they do have the sauce in the treble, but they could be a little bit bright, and for more than half the price you can get the Rockies, you can get the Hype 4 Mark IIs, you can even get the Horizons for like under $300. So value wise they might not be the best, but they are still a pretty musical and enjoyable set. That aside, we have survived another year of Sci-Fi. I hope you found this video to be fun, to be helpful. Let me know what your favorite IEMs are this year, and thank you guys so much for the support this year and the years before it. Happy holidays everyone. Hope everyone stays safe and have a great New Year's.
Shout out to Dom Q, Rox Cat, B Urak, Disco Scaldus, Walker Standard, Patrick, User, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Mr. Gorillas, Polly J, Gis Sang Young, Christopher Jackson, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Wizard, Obi, Treble Extended, Frickalicious, Ricardo, Tapasar, Choco Norris, Shim Bakale, Tomat, FKSRG, Cousin Fat Fat, Julius Phillip, Dead Riddle, Bilha, Nico, Addy, Michael, Trackstar, LL Here, Shuri, Ryan, Raphael, I am J-Rack, Ori, June, Hakase, Torcog, Effinadim, EGC, Raj, Chimika, Javir, CB952, Gilbog, Ocean 219, BC Knight, AK131, MN Gelato, Wad Joe, Yan, Unbounds Armatures, Vitor Kent, Variah Q, Tuna, Edward Yu, Robert McLean, Polar, The Surgeon, Rock Guy, Drave Gaming, Chef Bonky, JRX, Samuel, John Simon, Archie, Beefy Pigeon, Zeph Doom, Peter Walton, Slow Mo Rain, Dawsington, My Name is Jeff, Oscar, and Chrono. Thank you guys so much for the support.